Volodymyr Zelenskyy had a telephone conversation with Donald Trump. Steve Witkoff, a special representative of Donald Trump, has arrived in Moscow. More than 80,000 killed and wounded, almost 1,000 prisoners and about 3,000 units of equipment and weapons. These are Russia's losses as a result of the operation of the Ukrainian defense forces in the Kursk region. Let me talk you into more detail. My name is Vasilina Sereda and this is The Case, breaking down the stories that matter. Stay tuned and follow our web, YouTube and social for what you were looking for: fearless reporting from the heart of the war. On the morning of Wednesday, the Russian city of Bryansk came under a drone attack. Residents reported a series of powerful explosions, the sound of air defense system in action, and thick smoke rising near what appeared to be an oil facility. The event was widely discussed on Russian Telegram channels and social media. According to eyewitnesses, explosions began at around 5 a.m. local time, with over 10 loud blasts heard across the area. Some drones were reportedly intercepted by air defense system, while others appeared to strike their targets. Residents shared videos showing thick black smoke rising from part of the city. Social media users suggested the target was an oil depot. Those Russian officials have not confirmed this. 16 drones were reportedly shot down overnight by Russian air defenses, according to Bryansk region Governor Alexander Bogomaz. He also claimed there were no casualties or damage and that emergency services were working at the scene. The region is home to a strategically important site, the Bryansk loading station of the Druzhba oil pipeline, which is used for the storage and transport of diesel fuel, including for supplying the Russian military. Also, another oil depot and plant was again hit at Rostov. Volodymyr Zelenskyy had a telephone conversation with Donald Trump focused on the issue of ending the war. Ukraine's president said that Kyiv and Washington exchanged assessment of the frontline situation, including the growing wave of Russian terror attacks on peaceful cities. Zelenskyy also confirmed that Ukraine has already prepared a draft defense deal on drones with the United States. He called it potentially one of the strongest.
There is another decision within the framework of the initiative to purchase American weapons, plus $500 million, the total amount from our friends from Northern Europe, Sweden, Norway and Denmark. It will be implemented under the coordination of NATO. Such steps are a new real basis for all European security in the long term. Russia will never turn Europe into a continent of war, and it is thanks to our joint efforts that we can now guarantee peace. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The president of Ukraine called the new mechanism for purchasing American weapons a strong initiative that significantly strengthens Ukraine's potential for protecting life. The president expressed special gratitude for this initiative to Donald Trump in a telephone conversation.
Today we coordinated the positions of Ukraine and the United States. We exchanged assessments of the situation. The Russians have increased the brutality of their attacks. President Trump is fully informed about Russian strikes on Kyiv, other cities and communities. Of course, we talked about sanctions against Russia. The economy continues to decline, and that is why Moscow takes such a prospect and the determination of President Trump so seriously. This can change a lot. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Trump's special representative Steve Witkoff has already arrived in Moscow. His plane landed at Vnukovo airport, and now he has meetings with Russian leadership in Moscow. Let me remind you that the US president announced the day before that his special envoy would meet with representatives of the aggressor country Russia in Moscow on Wednesday, August 6. Donald Trump also said that he would make a decision on putting pressure on Russia and its trading partners buying Russian oil after Witkoff's visit to the Russian Federation. In July, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine approved about 140 new weaponry types and military equipment for the defense forces. More than 85% of them are domestically produced. Amongst the new items are ammunition, in particular UAVs, explosive payload, unmanned aerial system, ground robotic system, electronic warfare and reconnaissance equipment, as well as modern optics, means of communication vehicles and armored vehicles. The U.S. State Department has approved a potential sale of repair, technical support and logistics services for M777 howitzers to Ukraine. The total value of the package is more than $200 million. The Pentagon reported it added that the contractor for the first contract for $104 million will be a company in the UK. The U.S. Permanent Representative to the UN, Dorothy Shea, during a Security Council meeting indirectly accused China of assisting Russia's aggression against Ukraine. According to her, Chinese components are regularly found in drones, weapons and equipment that the Russian Federation uses to attack Ukraine. Washington called on Beijing to stop exporting so-called dual-use goods that in fact end up in the Russian military-industrial complex and that allow the Kremlin to maintain a high tempo of terror attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. And the Ukrainian temporary representative to the UN was very concrete and sincere in her comments, which came after the US speech.
These regimes supply Moscow with drones, missiles, and ammunition, while Chinese companies continue to provide dual-use goods and equipment, contributions that further fuel Russia's ability to wage war and deepen the suffering inflicted on our people.
Earlier, China promised to increase support for Russia in response to US President Donald Trump's threats to impose higher tariffs on Moscow trade partners. This was reported in The Telegraph. Analysts noted that the military partnership between China and the Russian Federation continues to develop in a secret but stable format. And this affects not only the course of the war against Ukraine, but also the global strategic balance. Amidst growing tensions in trade relations with the United States, China has limited supplies of raw materials to Western defense companies. The Wall Street Journal reported, citing sources, Beijing's decision has already led to delays in production and rising prices for rare earth metals. The latter are needed to create various military products, from missiles to fighter jets. China supplies about 90% of rare earth metals to the world market, and the country also occupies a leading position in the production of many other critical minerals. Ukraine and the United States are planning to launch 3 mineral extraction projects. This was announced by the head of the Ukrainian government, Yulia Sviridenko, after talks with the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. The parties also discussed strengthening cooperation in the defense sector and sanction pressure on Russia. This news comes in the wake of decline in Chinese rare earth supplies to the U.S. and its partners. Ukrainian mineral extraction has slowly stopped since the war started back into 2014, so reviving an entire mining industry with direct commercial orders from the US looks like a good kickstart for the economy.
We talked about continuing and strengthening cooperation in the defense and investment spheres. We paid considerable attention to the potential defense agreement announced by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on the production and sale of Ukrainian drones, as well as the possible purchase of American weapons. We discussed the launch of the American-Ukrainian Investment Recovery Fund. We are working to expand its mandate so that the fund can invest in the defense sector as well. We also raised the issues of increasing sanctions pressure and cooperation with international financial organizations. Yulia Sviridenko, Prime Minister of Ukraine, on Facebook.
More than 80,000 killed and wounded, almost 1,000 prisoners and about 3,000 units of equipment and weapons. There are Russia's losses as a result of the operation of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the Kursk region. This is the first case in military history when a country without a nuclear arsenal took control of part of the territory of the nuclear state. Valeria Nikipelova will tell you more about the result of the Kursk operation of the Ukrainian Defense Forces exactly 1 year after its beginning.
The commander of a unit from the 22nd Separate Mechanized Brigade of Ukraine's ground forces, with the call sign Storm, recalls how he reacted when he received the command to begin operations in Russia's Kursk region. He says the Ukrainian armed forces achieved what had once seemed like an impossible dream.
I won't make anything up. I'll say it honestly. I was shocked at first. I couldn't believe we were really going to cross the border. I thought it was just talk. But when the first group actually moved in on the 6th of month, I realized this was no joke. This was real, and I had to treat it seriously and be ready for combat.
According to several Western media outlets, Russia's military command learned of Ukraine's Kursk operation months in advance. But that didn't stop chaos from erupting in the ranks of the invading army.
They were scared. They never expected us to actually cross the border, to enter their territory, to start doing anything, like taking prisoners or storming positions. So they surrendered, both individually and in groups. We saw border guards, special forces, even conscripts laying down their arms.
Just days into Ukraine's operation in Russia's Kursk region, videos began appearing online showing Russian soldiers surrendering.
How many of you are there? Just me. They gave me the radio. All right, come on, move. They had been deployed near Sudzha and attached to the 155th Brigade. But according to them, the 155th Brigade left them behind. No communication, no food, no water. By the 5th day, they decided to surrender.
Ukraine's top military commander, Oleksandr Syrsky, stated that in just the first 20 days of the offensive, nearly 600 Russian soldiers were captured.
To free our people from Russian torture chambers, Ukraine's defense forces are constantly replenishing the exchange fund with captured Russian soldiers and officers. The most successful effort in this regard was the Kursk offensive. Between August 6, 2024, and May 25, 2025, our defenders took 971 Russian servicemen prisoner from a post by Ukraine's General Staff on Facebook.
Among the captured were Russian conscripts, who, according to President Putin, were never supposed to be involved in combat.
In 2022, 2023, and the first half of 2024, Ukraine was always the one to initiate talks about prisoner exchanges. But for the first time, Russia reached out directly, right after Ukraine launched its offensive in the Kursk region. In my view, the Kursk operation gave Ukraine a major advantage in this area. Dmytro Libinets, Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, in an interview with Ukrainska Pravda.
On August 24, 2024, Ukraine's Independence Day, 115 Ukrainian soldiers returned home from Russian captivity. To stop the Ukrainian advance and launch a counteroffensive, the Russian military sent tens of thousands of troops to the Kursk front and, for the first time, deployed soldiers from North Korea. Pyongyang provided Moscow with 11,000 elite troops.
Russia's use of the elite North Korean contingent indicates not only a deepening dependence on totalitarian regimes, but also real problems with the mobilization reserve. Together with our partners, we are monitoring these threats and will respond accordingly. Rustem Umarov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, at a press briefing on June 26, 2025.
The Kursk operation allowed Ukraine's defense forces to cripple Russia's strategic reserves and draw operational units away from other parts of the front. According to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the operation was essential in thwarting Moscow's plans to seize more Ukrainian territory.
This was a preventive measure to stop the Russians from capturing Sumy and advancing from the north, or from seizing Kharkiv and pushing in from the east. That's why our troops launched the Kursk offensive, to disrupt their plans for occupation.
At the peak of the operation, Ukrainian forces controlled around 1,300 square kilometers of Russian territory, more than 100 settlements. Today, Ukraine's defense forces still hold some border areas, and the Kursk operation continues.
The operation has since evolved. Its goals are now very different. What's important, region. Right now, the operation is ongoing near the Russian village of Tyotkino, in the Glushkovsky district of Kursk Oblast, and it's still achieving its objectives.
According to Ukraine's military command, the Kursk operation continues to pin down a large number of Russian forces, preventing them from launching offensives elsewhere.
Враг до сих пор не может ничего сделать.
The enemy still can't do anything about our presence there. Meanwhile, our forces are conducting maneuver warfare and tying down Russian reserves, troops that otherwise could have been deployed, for example, to the Pokrovsk front.
Ukraine's top commander, Alexander Syrsky, says at least 80,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded since the start of the Kursk operation. Ukrainian losses, he says, are significantly lower. Reported by Valeria Nekipolova, UATV News.
Share your voice, spread the truth, and stay with the gaze for the latest from the front lines. See you next time.